He went to war and woke up in a different country. Meet the soldier who slept for 40 years. In late November 1914, Jovan Petrovich got ready to fight for Serbia in World War I. At the age of 20, he was one of the youngest soldiers in his unit. As a private in the 3rd Army Reserve Regiment, he trained with his comrades for their upcoming deployment to the front lines. Though originally from Belgrade, Petrovich was stationed with his regiment in the small town of Valjevo. After weeks of drilling, he and his fellow Serbian patriots were finally shipped out to the Russian front. Life on the front was hellish. In October 1915, as the Austro-Hungarian army pushed deeper into Serbian territory, Petković's unit was forced to retreat. During the chaos of the withdrawal, they took shelter in caves along the side of a mountain near the town of Plotnik. But it would be their last stand. As the Austrians approached, they began to bombard the caves with artillery fire. One shell landed particularly close, causing an avalanche that buried the entrance. Trapped inside, the soldiers waited for daylight so they could dig their way out. When Petković awoke, he found himself alone in the dark. After several minutes, he realized why. His right leg was pinned under a rock and his left foot was numb with cold. The young soldier tried to move, but collapsed after a few steps due to excruciating pain. Unable to free himself, he crawled to an opening at the top of the cave and called for help. A peasant tending nearby fields heard him and summoned the local doctor. When the medic arrived, he knew there was nothing he could do. There were simply too many rocks blocking the entrance. The only option was to wait for a military engineer to come and blow open the cave. While trapped, Petković struggled to stay awake. With no food or water, he began hallucinating. First, he saw his mother and cried out for her. Then he imagined he heard the voice of Saint Sava, the patron saint of Serbia, telling him to keep going. As hours passed, his vision blurred and he fell into a deep sleep. When he next awoke, someone was shaking his shoulder. "Are you all right?" the voice asked. Groggily, Petković managed to reply, "Who are you? Where am I?" The stranger informed him that he was in a field hospital near Belgrade. Someone had dug him out of the cave, and word had spread that the man who slept underground for days was a miracle. But this was just the beginning of Private Petković's long journey back to health. After a week in the field hospital, he was transferred to a facility in Zemun where doctors worked to remove the rock from his leg. On January 6, 1915, the operation was deemed a success and he was moved to a ward for recovery. But something strange was happening. Petković still felt fine, but his body began to shut down. His heart raced, his skin grew clammy, and he struggled to breathe. Within days, he fell into a coma. Doctors had no idea what was wrong with the young soldier. They performed tests, but the results were inconclusive. Some believed he had gone mad, while others thought he was faking his symptoms. Finally, he was given a sedative and placed in a medically induced coma for a month. But even after that, he didn't wake up. And so he remained in the Zemun hospital until December 1918, when the war ended. No one visited him. His family assumed he'd died, and his commanding officers considered him missing in action. On Christmas Day 1918, Dr. Milan Stojadinović, head of the mental health department at the hospital, walked past the abandoned ward and noticed movement in one of the beds. To his astonishment, it was Petković. When he touched the soldier's arm, Petković awoke and cried, "Mother, is that you?" The doctor explained he wasn't dreaming. It was Christmas morning, December 1918, and he'd been asleep for over 3 years. Upon hearing this, Petković panicked. He tried to get out of bed, but collapsed on the floor. Dr. Stambouli spoke kindly to the disoriented soldier and convinced him to return to his bed. Then the doctor did something crazy. He let Petković sleep. After all, he'd missed a lot of important history. It was January 7, 1919, when Private Petković awoke again. Dr. Stambouli returned and explained he'd been asleep for 365 days. At first, Petković thought the doctor was joking, But when he looked out the window, he saw cherry blossoms falling from trees and knew spring had arrived. Something else was off. The uniforms of the guards outside the hospital were different. So the doctor told him about the Treaty of Versailles and how the Austro-Hungarians had lost the war. Still confused, Petković asked, "Where is everyone?" Stambouli replied, "They've all gone home." This meant Petrovich wasn't just missing in action. He was officially a prisoner of war. For 2 years, Dr. Stojadinovich visited Petković daily, talking with him about the outside world. He wanted the soldier to wake up slowly and adjust to the changes that had taken place since he'd fallen asleep. Before the war, Belgrade was a bustling city with horse-drawn carriages clanging down cobblestone streets. But now it looked like any other modern city. Automobiles zoomed by on paved roads, streetcars clanged, shop windows glittered with electric lights, and people hurried along sidewalks with telephones glued to their ears. As Petković recovered, his mind raced. Empires had risen and fallen. World wars been fought and won. But what about his family? The soldier demanded to know if anyone had visited him during his long sleep. The doctors said no, though they had sent out inquiries to the families of fallen soldiers. Sadly, they'd received no replies. Devastated by the news, Petković refused to eat. Whether from grief or some other ailment, he fell back into a coma. This time, he slept for another 37 years. He woke up in 1955, still believing it was 1919. Doctors had no explanation for what was happening to the soldier. Many believed he suffered from a rare form of amnesia, but no one could say for sure. Eventually, he was discharged from the hospital and moved to a home for veterans where he lived until 1960. By that time, he'd learned about the world he'd missed, including the fact that his parents had passed away. In July 1960, Private Jovan Petrovich, who'd gone to war as a strapping young man of 20, died of a cerebral hemorrhage. He never married and had no children. After 45 years of service, he was finally laid to rest in a Belgrade cemetery. The case of the sleeping soldier baffled medical professionals for decades. Even today, no one can say for sure why he slept for nearly 4 decades. One theory is that after being trapped in the cave, he suffered severe psychological trauma that put his brain into a state of suspended animation. Another is that his body rejected the sedative given to him in 1915. Whatever the reason, his bizarre condition turned him into a real-life Rip Van Winkle. At the time of his death, only 3 people knew the full story of Private Petković. Since then, historians have uncovered the amazing account of the soldier who slept through 2 world wars. But his tale has largely been forgotten outside of Serbia. We hope that by sharing it, we've helped to ensure that Private Petković's incredible story lives on. Now it's time to hear from you. What do you think happened to the Serbian soldier? Do you know of any other similar cases? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more fascinating historical tales.